Alright guys, today in the shop we have a 2008, this is a Ford Expedition, the EL series, and we're just changing the brake pads. So the tools you're going to need for this job is you're going to need to take the wheel off, so you're going to need a 7/8 socket or a lug wrench if you have one. You're also going to need a ratchet drive, or if you have air tools are always good, 7mm hex head. Alright, now if you go to your local parts store and you buy a kit, be sure to check the back of the kit that it says there is a 7mm in there. I was missing one, so I actually ran down to the parts store and made that mistake. I grabbed the set and I came back and realized it was missing the 7mm hex head. Depending on the Ford model you have, I believe some of them may be a 9. So make sure you at least have a 7mm and a 9mm that will go onto your air tool or your socket drive. You're going to need a flathead screwdriver, a tube of grease, and you're going to need a C-clamp. You may or may not need this as a rubber mallet in case the rim is a little bit tough to get off or the caliper is a little bit tough to move. A rubber mallet. Definitely do not use a regular hammer. So we're going to get started by taking off the 6 lug nuts. I'm not going to film me taking everything off, but I am going to talk you through step by step on what I did. Our wheel is off. Now we're going to come in, and you see this, there's this clip right here. We're going to go ahead and we're going to take our screwdriver and we're going to pry that clip off. Okay, well, I don't know if you really saw that or not, but basically what I did was I stuck it under there and just kind of pried up, and it popped off. Looking at the caliper, if you come around to the back, in the very top, there's going to be a cap here. You want to pull this cap off. Just like that. Alright, inside of that is going to be your hex head, 7mm. That's where you want to put that in, and you can either use your ratchet drive or an air tool to extract that out. Come down to the bottom, remove the other cap. Whoop, just went flying. And there's another hex head in there, 7mm, and you'll take that off as well. And just so you know, these are not reverse thread. You are going to be loosening them, turning left. All right, like any other nut and bolt. Righty tighty, lefty loosey. I saw on some forums that people were asking if they were reverse thread because they were really tight. Yes, these bolts will be tight and you will struggle with a regular ratchet drive. You may need to get some type of tension bar to help you get those off, but wear a glove because you may bust your knuckles. That's why I recommended the air tool, but these are not reverse thread. I'm going to use a air drive to get those out. Now once you have them loose, these bolts might not retract out all the way, and they will be still recessed out a little bit, which will prevent you from taking this caliper out. I'll put my ratchet back in here and continue loosening, and with my other hand I'll put a screwdriver in here and put some pressure, which is basically pushing the caliper this way, and it's helping feed that bolt out of there. Okay, now that you have your bolts retracted out, what you can do is you can take a screwdriver in here and kind of pry up a little bit on this caliper to pull it forward. It may slide off depending on how worn your pads are. It may just come right off. Be careful it doesn't fall and rip your brake line here or overextend your brake line, because then you'll have more problems. But you want to keep one hand on this. But if it's really tight and it's not coming off, if you look inside, you can take your screwdriver and you can see the lip of the brake pad right there. You can get right behind it and you want to pull. And it's actually going to compress this in, which will take pressure off of the rotor here. So find the lip of the brake pad in there, get your screwdriver behind it, and then you want to pull this way and compress it in to loosen up that caliper. So do it on the top and then come down to the bottom, and you can see the lip right there. Do it on the bottom. There we go. Now you want to set this up here so you don't let it dangle on this brake line up here. All right, notice the direction your pad is going here, and notice where the clips go. You're going to need to remember that later on. So when you're doing any type of job, always take pictures, take videos so you can refer back to them. But basically your pads are going with the shape of the rotor, and we can go ahead and pull that one off of there. Okay, and the other one is still remained inside of the thing here. We're going to leave that there because that's where our C-clamp is going to come in next, and we are going to compress the caliper. I'm sorry. So you see I have the pad on here, and I have the clamp. And the reason I'm keeping the pad on is because you do not want to score up your caliper. So you leave the old pad on here. Don't put your new one. Leave the old one on and use that. Put your clamp there and put the other part of your clamp on the other side. And you're going to crank this in. I'm going to have to shut the camera off. I need both hands. We're going to crank in, and it's going to push that caliper in. And then we'll move our clamp to the other side and push that side in as well, because we're going to need room to put our new pads on there. Okay, we have them compressed all the way in. Now you can go ahead and pry this pad off, and you'll know this is your back pad when you see them in the box, because this is the one that will have these clips on it. Okay, but take note of the direction that was going as well, and you can see this pad was pretty bad. And you want these really, really flush, so make sure they're flush, or put that pad back on and compress them more, because this will cause you problems later when you're trying to put this back on if they're not recessed in all the way. You're going to notice these little chrome clips that come with your brakes, and you're going to be wondering what the heck are these things. Well, if you look up here on your caliper bracket, they actually are right here, and they blend right in with all this rust. Okay, there's one on the top, and there's going to be one on the bottom. All right, take note of exactly how they are on there before you pry them off, so you can put them back on the same way. But essentially what you're going to do is you're going to get a screwdriver, and you're going to stick it in there, and you're going to try to pry it off just like that. Okay, and do the same thing to the bottom. Now, you're going to be tempted to stick your screwdriver in between the rotor and this clip. Do not do that. You don't want to score that. With the bottom clip, you can stick it in the front, and you can pry up on that, and you will be able, there we go, it came out a little bit, enough to get that to come off. All right. Now your bottom one is going to have this little clip on the top. See, the bottom here is flat, but the top here, my camera is horrible, has this little latch on it. Okay, so on the bottom of the latch part goes on the top, but when you come up top here, let me see, yeah, this latch here actually goes on the bottom, on the top of the caliper holder, and on the bottom you flip it and it goes on the top. You want to try to clean these up a little bit and get all the debris out of there the best you can. If you have a little wire brush or something, again, be careful. Whatever you're using, you don't hit the rotor. And anything where metal is making contact with metal, I always put a little bit of grease on everything. And this way it prevents any type of squealing or noises or anything. And it'll also help it easier to get it back on when you're ready. All right, I got the new clips on, and they look dirty, but they're new. I just coated them with some grease. And now we are going to move on to the calipers up here and put our pads on. Okay, you want to make sure this area is really clean right here. If it isn't, get a little brush and clean these off. And then you also want to get a little bit of grease, and you want to put it around the caliper here on each side. Some grease, and just anything where metal is going to be touching metal, you want to put some grease. All right, I got everything greased up there. Everything is greased up on that side, and I also took out my hex bolts, and I greased those up and got inside the passage here. Just lube these up all nice. And the back of the brake pad, I put the some grease on these adapters here. So now we want to put this back in. All right. So remember, this shape kind of goes with the caliper. All right, and you want to be careful putting these clips in there. You want to make sure they're lined up with the caliper in the back. This is really hard to do with one hand. And you want to try to compress them in there. Okay, so with two hands it's pretty easy. Just make sure your backs are lined up with the holes in the caliper there, and it would pop right in there. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and take our front pad, and we don't want to put it that way. Remember, it goes with the shape of your rotor. okay? And now these tips up here may give you a hard time lining up with this groove right here. But if you pull hard enough, these do turn. They do pivot right here on this little pin. So you may need a pair of pliers if they're not moving, but for the most part you can move them with your hand, because this technically should fit right in there and then snap in. Okay, and you can see this bottom one's not lining up with the groove, so I'm gonna have to get my other hand and slide that over. Okay, I got my pad on there. Now you can see it's not fully recessed in there, but that is why it's important to get these calipers compressed all the way in, because we got to slide that whole thing over top of this. And when we do, it's going to hold this firmly in place. All right, so now we're going to go ahead, I need both hands. We're going to lower this down and slide it over. All right, let's lower this down. Get it over top of that pad. Kind of shimmy it up on there. May have to push in on the pad a little bit here. Oh, we popped out there. Hold on. There we go. Your caliper's back on. So one of the problems you might encounter when you're putting your caliper on is these clips. You can see it's been scratching there. I literally had to push and get a screwdriver and push back on that clip so that this caliper would finally snap into place. These clips are a little bit of a pain in the butt. The bottom actually went on okay, but this clip was too far out this way. So I had to push and kind of pry on this for this to recess back and drop down into its groove. All right, now I can go ahead and tighten up my hex keys. You just want to make sure you're lined up. Do not cross thread these. All right, try to get them going by hand, but at this point your hands are going to be covered in grease. It's going to be hard to do. So maybe just get your ratchet and start turning it and jiggling this to get that centered up so that it starts threading in. Now you just have this clip. So remember, you want to put it in those two holes like that. Now remember, you had to pry this clip off. So guess what? You're going to have to pry to get it back on. All right, get those two holes set. And now these right here have to come around to the front. So with my other hand, I'll have to set the phone down, is get a screwdriver, stick it in here while I hold this with another hand, pry with the screwdriver to get this to come around the front. Our clip is on. Not gonna lie, this was a little bit of a struggle, but be careful doing it and don't scratch up your rotor. All that's left to do now is put the wheel back on and take it for a drive. Make sure everything sounds good. If you hear any squeaks at first, give it a little bit of a lengthy drive, and just don't go on a highway right away. You know, go around some back roads or something. Make sure everything feels good, sounds good, whatever. But as long as you follow those instructions, you should be okay. That's how you do the brakes on a 2008 Ford Expedition EL Series. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me at whattodorob@gmail.com. And please, if this helped you out at all, hit subscribe below. Give me a thumbs up. And I know every mechanic does things differently, and some guys will say, oh, well, you don't have to do this, or you could just do this. This is just my way of doing things. Everybody has their own technique. Hopefully this helped you out. I'll see you next time.